I'm late. I got a question. You ever judge people when you first meet them? You know, just on how they look, how they talk, how they laugh. No, not these people. It's just me and it. Ooh, yeah. First impressions. Ooh.
You need some help?
I do. I need some help. I need some help, Shopmaster. First impressions. Quite something, aren't they? First impressions. How they're formed, how they affect outcomes, and how accurate and persistent they are. The subject of much scientific inquiry. A great deal is now known about the evolutionary psychology and neural pathways involved in the formation of first impressions. However, such is not the topic of this evening's discourse. In short, Homo sapiens consciously and subconsciously process hundreds of discrete bits of data within milliseconds of meeting a new person. And the impressions thus formed affect our attitudes and actions toward that person. And this, in turn, affects the trajectory of the entire relationship. Study after study finds that first impressions are quite powerful and persistent. In other words, we tend not to change our minds. None of that probably comes as a big surprise to any of you here, nor to me. But I do find that last conclusion quite disturbing because of the loss it represents in terms of human happiness and potential. And I know this because, like everybody, I've been the subject of misguided first impressions. And don't get me wrong, I make them myself. I'm subject to some tenacious prejudices, biases, early programming that I really wish I could purge from my operating system, but somehow the best I've been able to do so far is to catch myself in the act of making an unkind judgment, and then to open myself up, quite sincerely, to the possibility that I was completely wrong. And because of this mental habit, I have found that sometimes, not too often, but occasionally, people I found intensely attractive at first glance are hardly worth a second glance. And sometimes people who hardly made my radar, even occasionally people for whom I felt a slight aversion, turn out to be the most fascinating, wonderful human beings I've ever met. So my first impressions aren't illegal, and I count that as a blessing. And because of the experiences I've had, I've come to the conclusion that getting to know someone is kind of like developing photographs in an old-fashioned darkroom. This blank sheet goes into a tray of chemicals, nasty stuff comprised of our preconceptions, our prejudices, our past experiences, our personalities. And if we yank it out too soon, we have only the vaguest idea of what the photographer wanted to capture. But if we leave it in that tray of chemicals, and we give it time, eventually we may gasp with delight, or shake our heads in dismay, or even weep at what is revealed to us. But if the photographer is keen, and she is, and if the developer is masterful, we can find beauty even in the horror. And the wonderful thing about making a new friend is that this process of development and discovery never ends. If we accept people's gifts of self-revelation with reverence and gratitude, depths upon depths will be revealed to us. The most cherished hopes, the most profound fears, their strength, their vulnerabilities, all the things that make them who they are as a precious person. But we can never know everything. And so even after we've known somebody for years, they can still surprise us, just as we can surprise ourselves. Because our inner journeys of development and discovery also take place in a dark, dark room. And sometimes it's a lot darker than others. And for myself, I find that when it comes to adjusting that cocktail of crap in my tray, tweaking my development process and pointing out little details of the composition that I might otherwise have missed, there's nothing quite as helpful as a good friend.